Hello beautiful people and welcome back to my channel. My name is Amity Gilmour and this is my life. If you're new here to this channel, I post weekly content on the subjects of gastroparesis awareness, productivity, routines, and some faith devotionals. So if any of those topics interest you, then be sure to click that subscribe button. Also, don't forget to ring the notification bell in order to stay updated from new videos coming from me twice a week. So this is part 2 of my gastroparesis story. I'm so excited you've clicked onto this video. However, if you have clicked onto this video and you haven't seen part 1, then I will link it up here. Please go ahead and check that one out because this video will not make sense unless you watch part 1. But if you've already watched part 1, then let's get into the video. Hello! Yes, I am having eggs for lunch again. Literally, it's one of my safe foods. It's always been a safe food, so I just stick with the eggs to make sure that everything's okay. I've got stuff all on my teeth. So it was the next day, and yesterday, basically I had to go to the doctor's. Turns out it was an esophagus spasm, which I've heard can sometimes mimic a heart attack. Like, it feels like a heart attack, and that's literally what it felt like. So let's talk about my first test that I got, which was an MRI. Well, technically this wasn't the first test I got, it was basically the first kind of bigger sort of test in terms of scans. Oh, actually, no, let me get this straight. It wasn't my first test. My first scan sort of test was an ultrasound. So that actually didn't make sense at all. But basically what I left out was, in the last video I was talking about how the doctor down in Wollongong thought I had PCOS, and the ultrasound was essentially checking for PCOS, checking for cysts, and also endometriosis. So that was cleared, that was fine. All of my gynecological whatever systems were great. So we then started looking down the path of gastrointestinal. Before the MRI, I had countless amounts of blood tests, checked for celiac and a whole bunch of other things. I also had a stool sample test that I did, multiple urine samples when I was going into ED. Oh, and multiple blood tests while I was going into ED as well. But this was the first kind of big sort of test other than the ultrasound. They decided with the fainting, well, let's see if like there's something going on, nerve damage or something. I got a MRI brain scan. Hey guys, future Amity again. So I realized that the whole MRI part of the story was very long and it's quite a bit of a video in itself. So I'm gonna do a separate video about the MRI experience. However, all you need to know in this video was the MRI came back normal, everything was fine, they couldn't find anything. So what followed after this was a series of going into ED, getting an x-ray to check if everything was okay, and I wasn't staying overnight in ED. I was kind of sent home early the whole time, except my first overnight stay. My first overnight stay happened in April, early April, and I remember it was just when coronavirus had just kind of like blown up in Australia, as I feel like in Australia we didn't have the in our country as quickly as other countries had it in their countries. They kept me in. They took a CT scan, which was my first time having a CT scan. I remember I was so scared. I was like, because I used to be so scared of needles and everything, although I was starting to get used to needles and I was starting to get used to blood tests. But what really scared me, they had to put through the veins potassium iodide, I think it was, and that had to run through my veins so that they could actually see what was going on in the abdomen area. I'd already moved back home by this point. I was at home for I think about a week or 2 weeks before I ended up in ED. So I got the scan done and we were waiting on results, and our results took quite a while. That was because there was a bit of a disagreement between two of the doctors. One doctor thought that there was swollen lymph nodes and the other doctor didn't think so. They didn't know what was going on as well, and they were thinking about keeping me in hospital for a week or so that they could just do test after test after test. They were talking about doing a keyhole surgery and getting my colonoscopies done, but obviously that didn't work because we had to be sent home. Sorry guys for interrupting again. What actually happened, I didn't explain it well in this video, but the Australian government had, I think it was the Australian government anyway, someone in power made the rule that there was no procedures or surgeries to be done unless they were like absolutely like emergency, like you're gonna die if you didn't get them done. And that was due to obviously the whole state the world was in. So because my procedure that I was getting done was only investigative, so it wasn't to save my life, it was to find what was going on, because there was nothing really they could do with me because of the point it wasn't an emergency. I wasn't about to die in the next week or so. There really couldn't be anything that they could legally do. So after I think it was 2 nights in the hospital, I then went home and we still had no answers. Something else they did find in the CT scan was fecal loading, which makes sense now, but they were kind of just brushing that to the side thinking, you know, that's not really an issue. Another thing that we noticed was they had given me dinner in the hospital, and then boom, about half an hour after having dinner, I had pain. I remember the nurse that was looking after me came up and he was like, so I've noticed, you know, you seem to get real bad pain after you eat. That's when it kind of was like, oh, okay, that's weird. But I go home, and then between then and May, I was going in and out of ED and just being sent home, not staying overnight, then managing it with painkillers, not knowing what to do with me. I then got a call last week of April from the gastroenterologist saying that he had scheduled my colonoscopy and gastroscopy. However, it was going to be scheduled to be done on the 25th of May, which means I would be fasting on the 24th of May, which the 24th of May is my birthday. And I was like, okay, whatever. I was like, you know, we need to find out, so just whatever. And I remember I went to the chemist to get some medications. All of a sudden I got a call from them as soon as I got back in the car saying, hey, can you go to the chemist and pick up a prep, because we're gonna actually get you in next week. So I got out of the car, went back into the chemist and was like, hey, so I need this as well. This was kind of last minute sort of thing. And they're like really nice about it, which was good. They're like, here you go. Went into the procedure to get it done. Procedure went well, it was good. I had a little bit of a reaction to the local anesthetic, just a mild reaction. After I finished, like I hadn't eaten anything for about 3 days or so. And they gave me a sandwich. Oh, I did have clear liquids and the prep, but that was about it. Then I went home, and on the way home, me and my mum got sushi. We got home, and then boom, I was in so much pain. Now, I'm not going to explain what happened in that kind of next hospital stay where I was in the hospital for about a week, because I did actually do a video on it. So if you want to know more about that experience, you can check it up here. So after being in hospital for a week after getting the procedure done, again, I will explain in the other video, I started to actually pick up, and I started to do really well. Like I was actually really doing great. I wasn't 100% there, but I was doing pretty well. I mean, I still had my issues here and there, but I was eating okay-ish, and I think the main thing was I had a lot of energy to do things. I did, however, have to quit my job though at the end of May because it was just getting too much, because I still was quite sick, but it was in kind of the June section where I started to actually feel okay for about a month. Then we come to July. I had been told by my gastroenterologist, my local one here, we checked your biopsies out, we also, you know, did the colonoscopy, it looks great, everything looks fine. I think you just have IBS. I'm sorry, what? Like, I've got IBS? Mind you, I want to be honest, IBS is not fun and it's a terrible thing to have. However, you know, there were parts of what was going on where I was not eating and I was losing a lot of weight. So remember, I was 80 kilos up until about Christmas, and then all of a sudden from Christmas to about June, I'd already lost like 7 kilos really quickly without even trying. I don't know, the IBS thing didn't really seem very legit. I kind of feel even still to this day that it was kind of like, well, we can't figure out what's wrong with you, so don't know what else to do, so we're just gonna call IBS from now and just let you go on with your life even though you're struggling. Meanwhile, Mum and I knew it was not IBS, there was something else going on. It did actually come to a point where I started to accept that maybe it was IBS, and that was in the brackets of about June. And in June, I was kind of like, well, I feel okay, maybe I had that doubt that a lot of people with chronic illness have, where I started to think, well, maybe it's not that bad. Maybe I'm just, you know, maybe I'm not actually suffering as much as I think I am. Maybe I do have IBS. Maybe it's not as bad as I thought. Maybe I'm just being too dramatic. And I thought that I started to believe slowly that I just had IBS. However, it didn't make sense because I was wasting away still. And this was more evident in July. In July, I started to lose a lot more weight, that by mid-August, I had lost 13 kilos without even trying, and I was about to lose a whole lot more. So at this point, Mum said, all right, this isn't working. You don't have IBS, obviously. There's something else at play here. You have got something wrong. And by this whole time, I'd also, by the way, been working with my GP to like work on what to look into. I was doing my research at home and coming to my GP and saying, hey, can we get this tested? And test after test I would do, and it would come back negative. Negative, negative, negative. You don't have this, you don't have that. So we had no idea what was going on because every test that we got came back normal, and it made no sense whatsoever. I remember I had watched a movie when I was in year 12, I think. In this movie, it's basically about a young girl who, out of nowhere, she just gets incredibly sick. It was kind of weird because that movie, for some reason, was in the back of my head the whole entire time going through this. And I kind of just brushed it aside thinking, no, like that seems really dramatic, like no, I don't know why that's in my head, it's kind of weird, but anyway. And I remember Mum had said at this point, said, hey, remember that movie we watched? And I was like, which movie? And she said, oh, the one with the girl with the sickness. And I was like, no, I don't think so. And she's like, well, I was looking up, I came across some clips from the movie and it just seems to be very similar. I remember thinking, no, that's ridiculous, like you don't get information like that through a movie. However, after I think about a week, I started to see that movie pop up everywhere. It was kind of weird. So I decided, okay, I'm gonna look into it. What is the condition this girl actually has? And I looked up and I saw that it was a motility disorder of the gut. And I looked up and saw some motility disorders, and then I came across gastroparesis. And I was looking at this thinking, oh my gosh, this is like me. This is what I feel. This is everything that I feel. This is exactly what's going on with me. Like, I have to test this out as well. So I went to my GP and I was like, hey, can we test this out? And he said, okay, yeah, sure. You know, go home, do some research, find a gastroenterologist who you would know about it, and I'll send you a referral to that person. So I then joined the support group before a diagnosis actually. And a lot of people actually do that to kind of look into it a bit more because it kind of seemed like this is what I had. And I remember I asked, hey, is there a doctor that you guys would recommend? And someone had said, oh, on the website, the Gastroparesis website, there is a list of doctors that you can choose from who know in each state about gastroparesis. All the ones that knew about gastroparesis in New South Wales were in Sydney, with one being in Gosford, I think, one being Gosford, one in Newcastle, I don't know. I decided that I would go to one of them in Sydney. So I then went back to my GP and said, hey, look, this is a doctor. And my GP was like, all right, cool, we'll send off a referral. So he sent off a referral. And meanwhile, I was not doing well. I was losing so much weight. And my mom, I remember, At one point, walked into the room, I was on my bed, like really sore, and she sat down and she said, look, we don't know what's going on. And I said, yeah, I know. And she's like, well, if we don't know what's going on, we should, you know, probably do this just to be safe. You've earned quite a bit of money from working and also quite a bit of money from busking, which I was busking at the time to make money whenever I could. And she said, I would hate that money to go to waste. Maybe you should write a will. That hit me and I was like, okay. Later on, when I was doing a lot better, I asked Mum about it and she said, well, she actually believed that I didn't have 2 months in me left because I was that weak. I'd lost that much weight and it was not good at all. So I ended up talking to one of my friends who lived down in Sydney, and she was such a blessing. Her and her husband, oh my goodness, they were like, okay, you come down here, you stay with us, and we're not going to bring you back home until we find out what's going on. We'll go to whatever hospital we need to go to. We're going to get this sorted. And I was like, love you, thank you. She was just lovely, and her husband and her just went out of their way to make sure I was okay. And I remember I stayed with them for, I think it was like a month or so, and you know, they had a spare bedroom which became my room for a bit, and they were like, you know, make this house your home, like feel at home. And it was so lovely. And you know, it was a tough time, I will be honest. I was losing weight like so quick, it was dropping off. There was a time where for a couple of weeks I was losing 1 kilo every 2 days. So as soon as I got to Sydney, I think it was only 2 days before I got a call from the gastroenterologist who said, hey, look, we've got an appointment for you in a month's time, see you then. And in the meantime, I was in Sydney with Mel, so whenever we had an issue, we'd go to emergency. We usually went to one of the hospitals in Sydney that was nearby. I remember they had said once, hey, these are the discharge forms, send them off to your gastroenterologist to see if he can schedule an appointment for sooner. So I went and I sent off the forms to the gastroenterologist, and he got me in sooner, which was good. He got me in pretty much a month earlier. We got in to see him. He pretty much was convinced it was gastroparesis before he even did the gastric emptying study. So he basically had prescribed me domperidone just like that, like straight away, and said, okay, come back in a week's time to do your gastric emptying study. Hello again. So this part of the video was getting pretty long as well, basically explaining what the gastric emptying study was, and I realized, like before, I've already done a video on this. So it's a video talking about all the different tests that I got done, and then also at the end talking about the gastric emptying study and what's involved. If you want to check out that video, I'll link it up here and you can go check it out. To be honest, while I was getting this gastric emptying study done, I was actually having a good day, so I thought, great, so it's not going to actually show up. Because of that ongoing process of, you know, finding something, being tested for it, and then it coming back negative, and then over and over again, every test coming back negative, I kind of thought, it's going to be negative. And to be honest, I just really wanted to be diagnosed with something. I know it sounds crazy. I just wanted it to be anything, because I just wanted to know an answer so we could like fix it and get on top of it, because the fear of the unknown is crazy. When you are sick and you have no idea what it is, number one, it feels awful. Number two, you have no idea how to fix it because you don't know what's caused it. I was waiting for results and I thought, you know, it's probably not gastroparesis, because, you know, that was just what my mind mentally said. However, it was literally the next day and I was editing a video on my computer when I got a phone call from a Sydney number. I picked it up and I said hi, and he said, hey, this is, you know, the doctor. So your test results have come back and it's shown that you have quite severe gastroparesis. And that was the weirdest feeling when I got that call, because part of the feeling was like, yes, finally I know what it is. But then also part of it was like, wait, but what does that mean? Is that a bad thing? Like, is it like dangerous? Is it deadly? I was just so confused, and I had so many like questions going around in my head, and I was kind of overwhelmed. I was like, oh, all this time we've been looking for something, and finally we found what the problem is. But I was overwhelmed because it's like, what? Like, what are we gonna do? It was about a week later and I went back home, this time with answers and a diagnosis. It was just a crazy feeling, like, I'm not gonna lie. It took me a while to actually grasp what had happened, and I think even now, a year later or less than a year later, I still find it hard to understand what's going on, because I mean, we still don't have all the answers. We know I have gastroparesis. We don't know what's caused it though, so we don't know which treatment options are supposed to happen. And also living with the unknown, with the fact that gastroparesis is so unpredictable. You could be doing great and then all of a sudden, bam, you're down really sick. You could be doing semi-okay or semi-bad, and then sometimes you can go to complete utter stomach shutdown where the stomach just does not work and it's just vomiting, and it can be awful. You can go from just one extreme to the other. Anyway, that was my video for today. I hope that this was able to inform you about what it's like to be diagnosed with gastroparesis and what's like in the lead up to diagnosis, from first getting symptoms to officially being diagnosed. I hope you liked this video. If you did, then be sure to give it a big thumbs up, and if you liked it even more, then don't forget to subscribe, because it really does help out my channel. Love you guys so much. Thank you for all the support you guys show. I really do love it. God bless. Bye.